Hello. Today I'm talking with a very special guest. This is Kimberly Mull, and she's a policy expert on violence against women. And she's got a very, you know, I'd say interesting story, but it's a horrible story that she's going to share with us today. Kimberly, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Election season's upon us, and are the favorite time of the year. So I think it's good.
So you're a policy expert. You're also involved heavily in legislation as well. Let's talk a little bit about those things first to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, so my background is in public policy, specifically in areas of violence against women and children. And what that means is I help legislators figure out how we can make the lives of victims of crime, specifically women and kids, better. And so I work on all kinds of pieces of legislation, everything from domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse are kind of the main areas. And I've worked on probably nearly 100 pieces of legislation over the last decade, mainly in Nevada, some in Oklahoma, Texas, and then, of course, in Washington, D.C. So that's kind of what my background is as far as, I guess, career wise. Personally, I got into this area because I'm a survivor of child sex trafficking. I was trafficked between the ages of 11 and 14 in middle school. And once I became older and aware of that it had happened to other people and other kids, it kind of became a life mission to speak up on it and to help hopefully change the future generations for the better.
Okay. So now you're a gun owner, right? You're a firearms owner, and your journey into and getting involved with the Second Amendment might be a little bit different than other people's. Do you want to talk a little bit about your original call to becoming a gun owner, and then maybe some of the things you learned before we get into the minutia of your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a law enforcement home. My dad's a law enforcement officer, retired here in Texas, and so I grew up around guns. And I'm in Texas, right? So we grew up learning how to be around guns, how to handle guns when we're allowed to, how to not touch them when we're not supposed to. So I grew up in a very gun friendly home. Um, but then as an adult, I made the journey, like a lot of women do, into liberal land and decided that guns were bad and evil and
Mhm.
that I needed to follow all these rules and regulations that everybody else says. And so I did have a gun that someone gifted to self-defense. And I got one of those little lock boxes where you put it in the lock box, and I kept my bullets in a different place because that's what you're supposed to do. And so I did all the things that, if you're going to be a liberal with a gun, you have to do all these steps, right? And so I did that. So that was my initial journey as an individual single woman with a gun. Was it's in a box in a closet, the bullets on the other side, and it's safe, and harmed by this gun. So that was my journey in my 20s of being a gun owner. But things definitely changed down the road.
Okay, so now you're in Texas now. That's where you grew up, but after that, you ended up in Nevada, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So I ended up in Nevada for probably close to a decade, working in public policy, working at the legislature, working on crime bills, helping victims' rights, working, helping with women who have been prostituted in the legal side of things in Nevada, who are extremely harmed in that system, and helping them get resources and connected to help, and helping tracking victims out of Vegas and things like that. So that's what I did in Nevada for a long time. After the 1 October shooting happened, I was appointed by the governor and the head of Department of Health and Human Services to oversee the $17 million recovery efforts for the victims of 1 October. Because again, my background's in victims of crime. And so oversaw that for the end of it. And yeah, so that was another exposure to not only guns, but mass violence as a whole, the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, and being around all the things around that. And so definitely Nevada had its uh, different experiences for me while I was there.
Okay. So now, while you were in Nevada, you also, were victim of a crime as well as an assault. Why don't we talk a little bit about maybe the beginning? How did things get started? And, because the beginning of your story, I think, is something that people need to pay attention to as much as the whole story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I was a single woman living in at the time I was living in Reno, which was the closest big city to Carson City, which is the capital of Nevada, where all the legislative work was done. And like a lot of millennials, I met a guy on a dating app, and he kept calling and texting me, asking me to come out. And I was like, no, I'm already in for the night. He kept asking me to come out. So his brother was there. There were other people there. It was at a sushi restaurant not very far away from my house, which I knew. So I was like, you know what? I'll just come say hi. We'll see what happens. So I go say hi. He's got friends, meet his brother's friends. And then he's like, "Hey, let's go back to his place or something." And I was like, "No, no, no, that's like, well, let me go back to my place because I felt my place was safe, right?" And go back to my place. And it's one of those things where you meet someone and you were talking and you like them on the app or texting, all that, but you get in person, you're like, maybe not my thing. Um, and we made out. We, made out a little bit, fooled around a little bit, and then he wanted to have sex. And I was like, no, I'm not really interested in having sex. He kept pushing it, and I was like, well, do you even have a condom? I'm really not having sex without a condom. And he's like, well, no. And I was like, yeah, we're really not having sex without a condom. And he decided that was not the right answer. So at this point, he was on top of me. He put his hand around my neck and started choking me and raped me. Um, During the whole time, I was saying, no, you're raping me. Stop. I'm pretty sure, well, not even pretty sure, I know I even quoted some NRS, which is Nevada statute. Oh, this is a sexual assault. My mind just went to like what I do, right, which is legislative. So I was literally going, this is sexual assault. This is the definition of sexual assault. You're raping me, and just kept repeating it over and over. Um, and by the end of it, he when he finished, he laid down next to me in my bed, and I'm just sitting there trying to figure out, okay, what do I do, right? Because this whole time I've been trying to think, like, do I fight? I'm like, I can't really fight. I've done research on strangulation and domestic violence. I know it takes 7 pounds of pressure for him to choke me or, to kill me. So I'm trying to keep, calm enough to think, okay, I gotta stay alive to this. I can't pass out. I had a J tube, which is like a feeding tube in my stomach. So I was trying to keep the weight off of that, because he could rip that out and literally rip my intestines out of me. So all these things I'm going through my head. And then I kept thinking, there's a gun in my closet. I have a gun in my closet. And so when he laid down next to me, when he was done, he started talking about, well, he was going to rape me again. He started talking about how he was going to rape me again, but he wanted to invite a friend over so that he could, I guess, help. At this point, I'm like, I have to get to my gun. I have to get this guy out of my house, because is he going to call this person right now? Is he kind of back? Like, what's happening here? And so I asked him if I can go to the restroom, because it was directly in front of my bed. And he's like, yeah, you can go to the restroom. So I get him to go to the restroom. My closet's right there. So I reach into my closet, and I'm trying to reach up. The gun case is on the top shelf of my closet. So I'm trying to reach it. I have one hand. I'm trying to be inconspicuous, right? So I'm trying to use one hand to open this damn case. And he literally starts, like, I don't know, I want to say giggling is the right word, but kind of like chuckling. And he's like, what are you doing? Getting a gun? At that point, I was like, well, it's now or never. So I reach up both hands. I'm like pushing both of these things to get this stupid case open, grab the gun. I'm thinking in my mind, the bullets aren't even here. The bullets are on that side of the closet, because I'm being a safe liberal. And so I'm like, okay, it's a revolver. You can see it. I have to make sure you can't see there's no bullets in it. So I turn around, I point the gun down in his direction, but down so he couldn't look directly into the revolver. And I'm like, yes, motherfucker, you just raped me. Get out of my house. At this point, he kind of takes a second and starts putting clothes on. I honestly, I don't care if I was screaming, yelling, I can't remember what was happening. I mean, he gets dressed, runs out of my house. I go lock the door, go to my phone to call 911. And then after that, mean, after that, it's kind of pretty simple. The police caught him a few blocks away from my house. Um, I did the police report. They took evidence. I had a sexual assault exam. I went to the police station and talked to them for several hours. Um, because they caught him, when the police caught him, I found out recently, he confessed twice to police, once to the police that arrested him and once to the detectives that were interviewing him, that yes, I was saying no, stop the whole time, that yes, I did not consent, that yes, I was saying he was raping me. And a week later, the district attorney of Reno decided that that wasn't good enough and released him, and no charged him. And so for the last 9 years, I've been ranting and raving around Nevada about a couple of things. One, um, we need to charge people with sexual assault, which wasn't being done in Washoe County. Um, the DA's theory was, well, he could have been confused and thought it was a fantasy game and that I wanted to say no and I wanted to be raped, which is ridiculous considering we never talked about that. We never spoke about that. It's just an assumption the DA came up with that, well, he could be confused, which seems to be a common a thing with that DA. And then two, I really became a big advocate for, if you're going to have a gun, it needs to be loaded to where you can get to it because it does you no good. um, if we, have all these quote unquote safety measures when you need it. Um, I, I really, it took me a while to kind of figure out like, well, I was doing everything I was supposed to do with the gun. Well, I was doing everything I was supposed to do with the gun with this by the definition of the people who say I shouldn't also have a gun, right? The people that say you shouldn't have a gun in your home are also the ones that are like, you need to have it locked away and the bullet's a separate place and all this stuff. That makes no sense because when you actually need the gun, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be loaded, and you need to be trained on how to use it. Um, and so that's kind of started my journey back into the to the right side, back to the conservative side. Was just how people, one, how dare I have a gun, um, but two, the fact that now I'm very much a proponent of, you need to know how to use your gun, you should have it loaded, you need to have it accessible, because otherwise it does you no good.
Now, obviously, in the aftermath of this horrible experience, there's a number of things that you went through, and you and I discussed some of them as well. And then, we'll just talk a little bit about the relationship with the firearm because you have now, since, like you said, changed your mentality and your thought process. And there's like a comfort level, right? That you were talking about manipulating and using a firearm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of multifaceted. So one, definitely, and this is not something that happened immediately after. This is something like, over a period of the last 9 years of trying to slowly get more comfortable with a gun. Even though I was raised around them, I think it's just one of those things where I've had exposure to it, but not enough practice and steady, consistent, use of them that I felt super comfortable with the gun. Um, and so that was something that I had to work on or still working on, because a lot of my anxiety and nightmares and things related to the rape aren't necessarily about the rape. I have flashbacks of pulling the gun on a person. And it's one of those things where, well, I can tell you right now, like I have no problem now pulling a gun on someone if I need to, but it's one of those things where I want to know feel comfortable and confident in it when I do it. And so I think that's been a lot of the journey. And the second has been um, just kind of the aftermath. So a lot of the things I found out with like the district attorney not charging my rapist was he was concerned that before my sexual assault, 3 weeks before my sexual assault, I had posted a picture with my gun online. And it was the Me Too movement. And again, I'm from Texas, so I posted a picture of my gun. It's a pink pearl handled revolver. Like, it's a pretty gun. So making what I thought was a cute social media post of like, hey, don't ever come after me because I can protect myself. Um, which apparently was a lot of talk more than anything. But he found that concerning that I was posting a picture of a gun on my social media. Um, then afterwards, after the assault, a local nonprofit took me they had I believe he's a sheriff's deputy, um, took me to practice shooting because they wanted me to feel more confident because I was so traumatized about pulling a gun on someone. So they wanted me to feel more confident. And I posted a picture of that. And the DA found that concerning that I would go shooting after pulling a gun on someone. And so I think part of it is not only learning to be more comfortable with a gun over this last nearly a decade now, but also realizing that people, even so-called Republicans, um, are using the fact that if we post photos or are open about using our Second Amendment, they're using it against us sometimes. And that is baffling to me. And it's one of those things where I think as society, because society's gone so crazy wackadoodle left, that they're really to hold the fact that someone is actually embracing their constitutional right against them in a number of ways is mind blowing. So in Nevada right now, there is a great congressional candidate named David Flippo who's running for Congress in District 2. And I saw a post yesterday or the day before of people losing their minds because when you go to his website, there's a picture of him shooting a rifle. And they have gone off in Nevada about how dare he have a photo of himself with a rifle, and he's a criminal. We should be arresting him. And if you see him, get on the other side of the street because he's going to start shooting people in the streets. I mean, the notion is absolutely crazy. My favorite photo of me is at the Gear Summit with an M50, and I have that on my Facebook. And I'm like, just because you see me shooting an M50, doesn't mean that I'm going to go crazy. It actually probably means I'm safer with a weapon. So this whole notion that people are using it against us in all areas of our lives, but especially a DA using it against a crime victim of, well, you have been, using a firearm, therefore, you either should have fought back harder or you should have, you could have been trapping this person. I mean, trying to make up these excuses of how using a firearm is a reason to not believe or not to convict a rapist is mind blowing to me. But apparently, it's not that uncommon.
Well, and looking at your story here, I mean, you've been victimized at least three times throughout this process where you had the initial assault and rape. Then you had the system really victimize you because doesn't sound like your case was handled the way it should have been. And then on top of that, while it was being mishandled, you also got victim shamed, like this is somehow negative that you had a firearm and everything like that. So in those 9 years, I mean, you actually pushed for and advocated for different policy change as well, right? And I want to get to
Yeah.
we're going to get to today as well soon. But let's talk about that 9 year period because there were some things that maybe you didn't know, and you went forward with, hey, um, these are things that need a change in the law, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's very multifaceted and very long process. For the most part, a lot of things I did not know about the DA foregoing charging my rapist around myself until a story done by the Reno Gazette Journal was released a couple months ago. Um, I had my suspicions, but didn't have actual proof of all of it. But during that time, I have worked on legislation because I knew at this point, after a couple years in, that the DA was not going to charge him, or at least felt it. I didn't know; they hadn't confirmed it, but how long did it take to, to have a guy that you've arrested for rape put him back in jail? It was taking too long, and so I worked with legislators to pass legislation in Nevada that says if your sexual assault has DNA, which mine I assume did because the bandit came inside of me and had choked me. I'd scratched him. I had water bottles with his DNA, all kinds of things at my house. So I assumed I have DNA. So we changed the time period from where you could prosecute someone for sexual assault if there's DNA to no statute of limitation. So forever. So as long as there's DNA, you can charge this person. And that's what I really wanted to make sure, because I was like, well, the next time we get a new DA, they'll have that DNA, they'll have the evidence, and they can charge by rapist. So I worked really hard on that piece of legislation. Also on legislation that said that as a victim of crime, as a survivor of sexual assault in Nevada, that we had the right to know the results of our rape kit and of the DNA. Because I'm convinced that this man, I was not the first woman that this man has raped. Um, and so I kept thinking, well, they run the DNA, they maybe you'll find a CODIS hit, right? They'll find a hit somewhere that shows, he's done this before. So my rapist is Ivy League educated. He has a master's degree or two master's degrees from Cornell out of New York. And I was like, he's been around too much. He's gone through too much. He's done this before. There's going to be a CODIS hit somewhere. So I worked on legislation that said that as a survivor, that we have the right to know our results, because the DA told me I didn't. When I was asking, was telling me I didn't have the right to know anything. Um, and then another piece of legislation that I testified on. I wasn't an author or anything, but I testified really strongly on is in Nevada, they were working on a law, of course, by the liberals, that said that if you have a gun in your home, it has to be locked in a way and the bullets to be separate, which is exactly what I did. I bought into. And so I testified of, look, that didn't work for me when I needed it. Like not, that's not the thing that is going to keep you safe when you need it. When you need it, you need it, and you need it loaded. And of course, it was a very strong Democrat culture. So they were able to pass part of it to where you can be held, I believe, civilly liable if like a child in your home gets a hold of the gun, which of course, but that's part of also teaching your kids how to be around weapons and not to use them. Like, so many of us were growing up. And so it's one of those things where the people that have the most opinions about this are also people that just don't want you to have a gun in the first place. And so it doesn't, again, a message I want, especially women, to know is that it doesn't help you if you're not comfortable with it. It doesn't help you if you don't have it loaded and if it's not near you. And so those are the things I'm really trying to get across to people of like, these are things we need to make available to women, because I feel like if I could have got to the gun before it started, maybe I would have been able to, to not go through some of the things that I went through.
Sure. And now you talked a little bit about learning things kind of more over the last couple of months, because there's a reporter that did some investigative work on, basically your story and stories surrounding this individual. So, what have you learned now, like most recently, about your case and then perhaps potential patterns?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing for me is I honestly think that the current district attorney of Washoe County, Chris Hicks, isn't prosecuting sexual assault cases. Now, crimes against children, yes. Human trafficking, yes. He has special prosecutors brought in for those cases. And so through grant money. And so they're very well versed in that. But plain old fashioned sexual assault and rape from someone that's 18 over, I don't think he's prosecuting. It seems to be that his excuse repeatedly is, well, the guy could have believed that you wanted it. Well, that's the defense for every every rapist, I think. But the notion is that he's all about protecting his win rate and his numbers and his statistics. And so if he charges someone with rape and then doesn't win in trial, that would hurt his statistics. And so I think his way of avoiding that is just not charging sexual assault. I think if we looked at his numbers, which seriously for 9 years I've been trying to get and can't get, but I think if Reno Police Department brings him 200 rapists a year or rapes, they identify 100 of the rapists. I would think his numbers are in less than the tens of actually prosecuting, and it could be lower than that. And so I think his main thing is to avoid the subject as a whole, which is not only hurting women in that community, but it's also just hurting the whole thought of justice and fairness. The fact that I've learned through all this is that my ability to get justice and my ability to seek justice rely on this one person who's voted into office by the people of that area. And when their focus is on their own reputation, or just the fact that they're not good enough, apparently, to try a rape case where the man confesses twice to police. If they're not good enough to do that, um, then that somehow negates my access to justice. That's not a fair system. That's not fair to the people of that county. It's not fair to the people of the country, when that's how the system works. And so that's kind of been the journey, mostly. And again, with the reporter, I found out that he had been holding the fact that I had pictures of myself with a weapon and that I went shooting after the fact, used those against me. Those were part of his reasoning on the record of why he chose not to charge my rapist. And if we have, and mind you, this man's a Republican. So if we had people who are elected to office, or just even who are, members of the public service, using the fact that someone has embraced their Second Amendment right against them, that's not good for our society as a whole. And it's just a bigger issue and broader issue. And again, like I said, with like seeing like the David Flippo um things online in Nevada about people freaking out because there's pictures of him with a gun on his website. Like, it's do we forget that shooting's an Olympic sport? Like, shooting is so much more than just targeting people. And so it's one of those things where I think, I think we have bigger issues in this country than people even realize, because this is something that people are using against us in a not only a civil way or an online way or a way to bully us or attack us online, but now in a judicial way and a way where, people are saying, nope, if you have pictures of yourself with a weapon or you're shooting a gun and you're a victim of crime, well, then, well, that seems suspicious to us. And that just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. So now this district attorney, he's currently the district attorney right now, but you had some news that you just shared with me right before we got online, right? So let's talk about a little bit of that.
Yeah, so for the first time in 12 years, he had someone that ran against him, also Republican. That man's name is Wes Duncan. And Wes is actually, he was the assistant attorney general at the time of my assault. And whenever Washoe County, Chris Hicks wouldn't give me or tell me information about my rape kit, Wes is who I went to at the attorney general's office and was like, "Hey, here's what's going on." And Wes is the person that went and found my rape kit. And Wes ran against Chris Hicks this I guess, God, last week, and beat him by almost 20 points. An incumbent for 12 years was just beaten by another Republican in the primary, and there was no Democrat running, so he officially wins, but by almost 20 points. And I believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that not only myself, but other women were coming forward and talking about how this district attorney is not prosecuting sexual assault, how he's holding it against women, things like where we were, how we dressed, if we had been drinking, if we invited the person over or not, if all different kinds of things that are things that in this day and age we have so much more to deal with than think, oh well, her dress is short, so she must deserve it. How a DA thinking that is mind-boggling to me. And so thankfully now he is, as of January, he's going to be out of office. Wes Duncan is going to be the new district attorney for Washoe County. And one of Wes's big things is he's going to go back and look at cases over the last 12 years that have been no charge, and see what can be done, because when you have someone that's not prosecuting just this but other things because of their own personal beliefs, that's something that needs to be looked at, because heaven forbid there's more people that are more victims of crimes, especially women, who, if they posted a picture of themselves with a gun or are known to be a shooter or are known to, embrace their Second Amendment rights, holds that against them and say, well, because of that, I can't prosecute your rapist because in some fantasy land, maybe you were luring them in trying to shoot them. Like, that's not what we do because we enjoy shooting. That's not the goal of things. And so hopefully this mindset now will be erased from the county, and hopefully new, better days are ahead.
Now, do you think that you'll find some level of justice in your own case now with the new DA getting involved? I mean, you enacted policy change. You were a positive force in those regards. Are you hopeful come, January?
Um, it's a double-sided blade. One, of course, I'm hopeful, but again, like I said, one of the bills that I worked on, probably a year or two after my assault, where we removed the statute of limitations if you had DNA. During the reporter's story that came out a month or two ago, the DA, the current DA, told them that there's no DNA in my case. That even though the man raped me, I scratched him with my nails, even though he ejaculated in me, and even though they have water bottles that he drank from my house, a wine glass he drank from my house, there's no DNA. Nothing could come up. Um, which seems very suspicious in a lot of ways. I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but they said part of it, even though I went through a whole rape exam, I was a lot heavier at the time. I had weight loss surgery, which is why I had the J tube. But I had weight loss surgery, but I was still size 24, which is a bigger woman. And they said, well, they couldn't get DNA because they couldn't complete my sexual assault exam because I was overweight. I was obese at the time, which I don't think they know how the woman's body works. One, because pap smears, everything else will always come back normal. So I'm not sure how that works. And then two, they're saying they took no swabs. I sat through a rape exam. They were sticking things inside of me and swabbing things. So the fact that now there's no rape kit in my case, again, I don't want to be a conspiracy person, but also where did it go? Where did all that go? I've been a thorn in this man's side for 9 years now, this DA's side, trying to get people to listen to me, trying to get people to say, hey, I was raped. I know I was raped. You have to get this man out of, in jail. So he works with kids every day. That's what this man does. And so I was like, we have to get him in jail. And then mysteriously now, after I work on this legislation around DNA, after he's a month away from losing the election, he's reporting, and it's never been told to me, but now he's reporting that there is no DNA in my case. Now, mind you, Wes Duncan had to go find my rape kit a year after I was raped because they had no clue where it was. But now they're saying there's not even any DNA, and they didn't actually do a rape exam. They didn't take any swabs. Again, not a conspiracy theory, but I'm very skeptical if once the new DA takes over, if they're going to find anything in my case, um, just because it feels like things are being done to make sure they're not. But again, I did scratch him. The police took photos of me, scratches I took on him. Like they can't have excuses for that DNA, right? Like they had the water bottle you drink out of. That's gonna have DNA. So I'm hoping that the new DA can use some things other than just the sexual assault kit that mysteriously doesn't exist against this man. So we'll see what happens. If anything, at least the people moving forward and some other victims will get justice. And in that time, I'll just keep ranting or raving, trying to get people to listen about, how we can make things better for everybody.
Oh, Kimberly, this is an absolutely horrible story. And, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this and endure this. It's just absolutely awful. What's I guess, your final call to action here, like your message to women that might be tuning into this?
Yeah, my final message is definitely take the steps necessary to get comfortable with a gun. Get comfortable with it, know how to use it, know how to protect yourself and your family, and make it accessible. So often, though, as women and moms and things like that, we are like, well, we need to think about safety. We need to think about this and think about that. There's other ways to be safe other than just keeping things apart where you can't use them. There's other ways to be safe. Teach your kids how to be around firearms. Teach your kids how to, to interact with them. Put them up where you can only reach them, but make it where it's accessible so you can use it when you need it. Because again, it doesn't help you if when you need it, you can't get to it. And then if it's not loaded, that just doesn't help either. So that, and then getting comfortable with the gun. I'm trying to work with some people to create a system with that, specifically for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, where we can help women become more comfortable with handling a firearm, and then also, empowering them to be able to make sure that they can keep themselves and their kids safe. So that's my number one takeaway, I think.
Okay. Is there a place on socials or something that you want to plug, where people could find you? If they want to reach out to you, if they, have questions or maybe are looking for advice, what's your handles?
Yeah, so I'm not huge on social media, but I do have a website. It's kimberlymull.com. People are free to reach me out there, and yeah, go from there. So my goal is to try to help as many women and people as I can, but also I think now I'm kind of leaning more into that, just helping people be educated and know that the whole notion that a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us have bought into of, well, we have to keep our guns separate in a way and locked away and all this stuff. When it comes down to it, that doesn't help you. That's when you need it, that doesn't help you. And why have it if it's not going to be accessible when you need it. So I think that's the main thing I want to help people with and help become educated on and go from there.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your story with me and for me to be able to send this out to my audience. And thank you very much. And we're definitely gonna stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too. Bye bye.